Alright, so I'm talking blonde protagonists who complain about things this week because for some reason I'm indulging in both these sources of media at the same time, and I think one could really learn from each other. And whatever, it's my channel, I can do what I want. Because the Wild West doesn't even really exist, so it's basically the same as Witches. And both of them have a weird way of treating their people of color, and I can go from grizzled cowboys and moccasins to edgy teens whenever I want. But in case you haven't read the title, I'm playing Red Dead Redemption 2 and watching the chilling adventures of Sabrina at the same time. And as I was playing Red Dead Redemption 2, I started getting the inkling of a problem. One I couldn't really find the words for, but then I started watching Sabrina and all of a sudden it suddenly became apparent. Red Dead Redemption 2's pacing between its narrative beats sucks and is super slow. And surprisingly, Sabrina's quick episodic plot shows a pretty tight pacing speed that I think Red Dead Redemption 2's pace could really learn something from. So I'll keep this spoiler free because these things are so new, but obviously because Red Dead Redemption 2 is a western, some themes of being lost and wandering are bound to be there. And a lot of the work is there to make you feel that way. Arthur's lack of direction, inner turmoil succeeds because you as a player feel a desire to wander away from the story missions and focus on your own personal adventure. It's a very nice blend of gameplay mechanics of open world and narrative. However, in Red Dead Redemption 2, there is so much filler in between missions. Sometimes a mission starts off really narratively promising, but then slowly divulges into similar shoot all the bad guys and make some money, before the next big story beat occurs. In reality, a lot of these so-called story missions Arthur undergoes could probably be skipped, and you only need to play the first and last chapter, or mission of the chapter, and you'd still have a pretty good concept of the plot. Like, for example, the first chapter of the game, you hear all about this rival gang called the O'Driscolls. The gang members talk about them with this thick air of remorse and malice, so you get a feeling like, okay, I'm supposed to hate these guys. I really want these guys gone and dead. But it honestly takes all the way to the end of third chapter for that plot line to even go anywhere. And these chapters aren't short, depending on how quick you rush the story, which for a new player would easily be 5 to 10 hours. That means before you get any kind of plot progression, the player needs to play at least 10 hours of your game. Which is... the pacing in between these narrative beats is not good. On the contrary, the pilot episode of Thrilling Adventures of Sabrina all talk about this ceremony called the Dark Baptism. It sounds like something that's being built up to. All the characters talk about it with this dreadful certainty that everything will come to a head at this moment. Will Sabrina go through with it, or will she not? It's the hook of the show. Basic teen, will she or won't she? But by the second episode, the Dark Baptism happens and Sabrina has already made her choice, which in a lesser show would have been the final episode and all the characters would have been stuck in this character growth limbo till the plot finally catches up to them. But no, the big climactic event happens and then the show becomes them dealing with the aftermath, which is then becomes the hook for the rest of the series. Which, when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense since the episodes are an hour long. The audience is given 2 hours to build up to this climactic event, and then moves forward with the plot. Because to focus so much on a singular plot event makes a story begin to feel stagnant. And Sabrina isn't perfect, obviously this isn't a pinnacle of writing either, but the fact that the plot is progressing acts as a level of engagement that Red Dead Redemption 2 is really lacking. And I feel like this is when people might say, well, Red Dead needs for you to spend time with their characters. You need to get used to them and understand their quirks to be endeared to them when these big plot moments happen. Which, yes, I like most of the Vanderlyn gang, and the dialogue is really good at establishing character dynamics and fleshing out the individual relationships Arthur has with each of these members. None of them really feel the same, which is really important in these big ensemble games, which, you know, Sabrina mostly focuses on Sabrina. That being said, each of the missions you do with gang members commit what I call the action narrative sin. And that is that the characters will be talking and it'll normally devolve into an argument of varying severity. Which, yes, it needs that gradual process. And it just starts to do some real character work when all of a sudden something starts attacking our characters and we need to start some kind of combat encounter. happens in action movies all the time, and the same thing happens to action games. So it's not a unique problem to Red Dead, but I think it's still a critique because it's preventing these action characters from actually progressing as characters because we feel like we need the action there to, keep us enticed because the narrative drama isn't strong enough. And it also doesn't help that Arthur's kinda passive protagonist to begin with. Yes, it's fitting for him to be that way, but that also means he doesn't engage with the other characters unless they initiate the process. So any character work being done is forgotten past combat, and Arthur splits off with them afterward. And while that might be in line with his character, that does not make it an engaging and deep dynamic for the story. And Sabrina's the exact opposite. She's a girl very motivated to go out and fight the world around her. The plot of each episode is dictated by her actions. She is not a passive protagonist. The conflict is started and resolved by her actions, which makes for an interesting dynamic to watch. Because despite her narratively driving the action, that does not mean her character is able to competently cope with all the problems she starts. And unfortunately, I can't really dive into specifics to avoid spoilers, but I hope you're beginning to understand my point. That I think pacing your beats in a story is very important. Going too long without another beat gives an audience that feeling of, well, why are we doing this again? Or, I'm ready for this to be over. It even cheapens the payoff when it does happen because the audience can feel bitter for the sheer amount of time it's spent getting there. And obviously, games are very different from television. Sabrina still sometimes speeds things up a little too quickly due to its episodic monster of the week nature, and sometimes I lose sight of what the actual macro plot is, which Red Dead never loses sight of, but sometimes it just takes a little too long for it to get there. But a healthy balance needs to be established, or else you end up pandering around Valentine for hours trying to win your money back in a game of poker, off hunting another legendary creature, when in reality what you're supposed to be doing is this super, kind of pretty time-sensitive main story, but still allows for, you to do all this other stuff in the middle. It's just a little weirdly spaced. But for now, that's all I got. Let me know if you want to see more of these weird mashups, and I'll try to think of some more. But for now, thanks for watching and sharing this with your friends, and I'll see you all next time.